Well, the UK government's Brexit Secretary David Davis says that the UK's position is perfectly clear. It wants a free trade deal with the EU, but also the freedom to strike deals with other countries. Let's speak to Kirsty Hughes, Director of the Scottish Centre on European Relations, and David Scullion, Deputy Editor of Brexit Central. Good morning to you both. Kirsty Hughes, I suppose the big question here is whether we can have the same arrangements or arrangements that are as good as the customs union without being part of it.
I think we can't have the same arrangements. I think that's clear. The customs union involves setting a common tariff to other countries around the world. So if you want to set your own trade deal, then you can do that, but you won't get the economic benefits that we get today of being in the customs union. And Barnier did say, you also have to be in the single market if you want to have barrier-free trade. And that really matters for our exports. It matters for the Northern Ireland border. So the EU is perfectly open to a free trade deal, but I think in my view and in the view of many economists, that's going to be very damaging to trade and investment and therefore to jobs.
The EU has been clear, David Scullion, that you don't get as preferential treatment if you're out with the club, as it were. So does it follow that the deal that we will end up with will be less attractive?
Well, that's the EU's starting bid. That's their negotiating stance at the start. And, we need to negotiate back. They've said that we won't get this preferential access. Well, that's their starting position. We start from a period of total alignment. And so there's no reason why we can't strike a really good trade deal. But if they decide to pull up the drawbridge from their side, then, they sell more to us than we sell to them. So I think we'll be fine. And we can do things like reducing tariffs on goods that we don't produce ourselves. We can do that unilaterally, which will reduce prices after Brexit.
Kirsty Hughes, is this just the beginning of a negotiation? Is it just a case of each side setting out their position and actually things may well be fine?
No, I think it isn't that at all, because these are rules that are applied around the world. If you look at the Norway-Swedish border, they're both in the single market, but even there you have spot checks, you have cameras, because Norway has its own independent trade policy, and there's something technical sounding called rules of origin that have to be checked. Otherwise, imagine we gave no tariffs to Chinese goods and the EU gave high tariffs to China. They could all flood in through the back door if we didn't have checks at Dover, checks on the Northern Irish border. So, yes, you can negotiate a trade deal and negotiate it hard, but you're not going to be able to have just-in-time production for cars. People were talking about aeroplane wings. Will Britain keep its competitiveness in those if it can't do just-in-time production? You can't not have border checks. You can't have a frictionless border without being a customs union.
To that end, then, David Scullion, does that not fly in the face of what Theresa May told us at the end of phase one of these negotiations as regards the border with Northern Ireland?
Well, look, 4% of external imports into the country are physically checked. There already is a border in Northern Ireland. There's already different tax regimes, and we can use technology, things like blockchain. We can use trusted trader schemes to wave, a huge number of these things through without any kind of checks. There are solutions to these problems, and we need to stop saying look, this is too hard. We can't leave the customs union. It's too difficult. This is what people voted for at the referendum. Look, during the Scottish independence referendum, if the Yes campaign had won, we'd now be working to implement Scottish independence. We wouldn't be harking back to the Project Fear campaign that we saw. And why is this any different here for the EU referendum?
OK, well, we'll talk about this again, I'm sure. Thank you for joining us. David Scullion there of Brexit Central, Kirsty Hughes from the Scottish Centre on European Relations.